Hello and welcome to the project presentation by Daniel Moore for game 3003. Yeah, I got it. Here we will be talking about some of the design elements, the game I created, and some problems that I faced and solutions to them, as well as some other topics. Yeah, sorry about that. What was made? Here you can see the layout of the level that I made. Here you can see that there are some expanded buildings around the outskirts. This is to make the game more immersive for the player, so then that they believe that they're actually in a city and not just an empty void. You can also see on the inside layer of buildings that the player is able to traverse, and there are puzzles and stuff for them to solve and get across. Speaking of the puzzles, this is one of them. The player will be coming up on the bottom right hand side here, where they will have to get to the other side of this building, and there is a giant scaffolding situation in the way. So the player must be able to climb up and get over and get around. This is a little puzzle as they are making their way through the city. This is another puzzle where the player will be coming up across these little yellow beams, and they'll make their way onto the other building. They'll be able to climb up and then go across these crane-looking puzzle areas where they're designed to look like cranes, so the player can then climb across them, climb on platforms that they're dangling, as well as platforms on the skyscraper. This is the original design. Here in this image you can see the original design that I had made. The game does include the original design, however the game expands on this. The playable level is about 4, maybe 5 times bigger than the original design, and the overall level, including all the outskirts, is about 8 to maybe 10 times bigger. How is it different? Well, in the first image on the left hand side, if you look there, you can see that there are 2 sections. Section 1 where the player spawns, and there's a block, some rubble, and a slope, and some broken stairs, and the player must take the block to the broken stairs and then make their way up into section 2, which is divided by a upper and lower floor. The upper floor is this walkway where the player must just walk around and then jump across the gap to then push the control box to open the gate for the car. And then in image 2 on the top right hand side, you can see that I had built that essentially, and then in the third image in the bottom right you can see the final level, and if you look into the top left of that image you can see the original design is right around the corner, and then I expanded on this with all these buildings and free roaming areas. Why is it different? Well, there are quite a few reasons why my game is different than the original design. Most of them are technical problems. I had a few hardware problems and some software problems, and this also links into my fourth problem there, which is time restraints. And after trying to solve so many problems all the time, at some point I was then running and racing against the clock, so I had to make some decisions to change up my game a little bit. I also wanted to extend the gameplay to reach the criteria, as my game was maybe not the best, maybe running a little bit short, so I had to add some more to make sure that it was a much better experience. And also I wanted to merge my 2 levels together, as it was easier for me to have a larger level than 2 separate levels with a loading screen. So yeah, time restraints again. At some point, facing all these technical problems, I had a deadline and I had to meet it, so I had to cut some corners, I had to change some things, and to make sure that everything was in on time and everything worked on time. The high concept of my game, this is saying that this is a puzzle game, as well as like running through the city in an unconventional sense. And if you can see back here that it's a puzzle, and then they also have to run through the city to get to the top of the skyscraper. So that's the two elements: solve the puzzle, get to the tower. And then I also made getting to the tower puzzles as well, so then it was more fun for the player to traverse the city. The essential details was it for it to be, ultimately I wanted it to be a puzzle game. I wanted the player to be able to solve puzzles, environmental puzzles, speech puzzles, anything that had a good narrative towards it. I wanted it to be a noir-esque detective story with a strong narrative. Design problems. During the making of the game, I encountered many problems, from technical problems to code hardware struggling to keep up with the software being used, as well as some design flaws in the game itself. Making the game put my skills to the test. Here in the image below, you can see me trying to attach a hinge to the gate so the player can open the gate with a control box. However, I never completed this, and the gate was left open so the player can walk through, thus losing the puzzle element of the game. So back here you can see that the player had to push a control box for the gate to open. In my final game, the gate is open, so the player doesn't have to push the control box to open it. They can just jump down and then walk through. The big problem and the solution. The biggest problem I had was working on my laptop to optimize everything that I had designed for the game. So while I was running out of time, I had to complete the game. So I made a decision. I had to take less focus on the puzzle element of the game as it was drawing too much time, and I needed to focus on the running element of the game. So I took my first level and my second level, I merged them together, and then my first level, it was taking up too much time, so I focused on my second part of the level, and I expanded on my running element of the game, allowing the player to traverse across the city. So then I started expanding the level to fit the new narrative, so I had a game completed in time. The research. These two bullet points here, you can see, these are just two little research pieces that I used for my game. The evolution of video game narrative and the official rulebook of choices in video games. These are some examples of research that I looked into for my game. I had chosen these as I was focused on making a strong video game narrative, through story and gameplay, as well as making some strong, meaningful choices in video games. In this image, you can see the schedule that I had been working with. You can see the green tasks that have been completed, yellow tasks that I had either completed or that had been behind schedule and that I needed to finish, and red indicated tasks that hadn't been completed. The schedule worked well, as it allowed me to understand where I was and where I needed to be, and what tasks were holding me back and what needed to be expanded on. It was also very helpful as it broke down the tasks into little bite-sized chunks instead of just make a game, make level 1, do this. There are parts here where it's like add assets, build the white room, color correct the white room. So it was little bite-sized chunks for me to get into. And here is some gameplay